Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening, Mark.
So, I don't know whereabouts on the screen, but it'll be somewhere. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe, click that bell, and you will be updated with new episodes and new bits and pieces that are coming out. Just a reminder that the views that Adam and I share tonight are that of our own and not of our employers. Adam, how's your week been?
Do you know what? It feels like a Friday and it's a Tuesday. I woke up on Monday and I thought, it feels like a Friday. I was shattered this week, and I've, not done much. Well, I say not done much this week, and it was nice weather, wasn't it? So we, got bits and bobs done. But I just feel tired. I feel like I'm saying this more and more as we go on each week. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I think a bit like you, it does feel like it should be a Thursday or a Friday. It's strange that it's a Tuesday evening already, but yeah.
We're just changing social care too much. We're just giving ourselves too much work to do and getting it done too fast. If only we worked a 4-day week, eh? If only.
So, any news in social care this week?
So we had the first day of social care remembrance and reflection, I think it was. I'm going to let you go on that one first because I know my views have been a little bit, I don't know, controversial, I suppose.
Yeah, so that was on the 17th of March, so last Thursday, if my calendar in my brain is correct. So, yeah, it was put together by Skills for Care, along with some other care organisations and care forums, just to remember people that have lost their lives in social care throughout the pandemic. And also just to spend time thinking about those that are still working the front line, putting themselves before, their family and everybody else, just making sure that the people they care and support are put first and foremost. So yeah, it was a good day. I must admit, I didn't spend as much time as I wanted to on it. It was my wife's birthday, and we were out and about. But yeah, it was a good day, and I think a good day to remember everybody. I think the only downside for me that I know that you and I spoke about, Adam, was that it was on the same day as St. Patrick's Day. So I always feel like the hashtag would never ever trend as much as St. Patrick's Day would trend. But
this is one of the things I didn't get about it, and I love a good campaign. I love a good sort of celebrate social care. I absolutely love it. I don't understand why it was on the 17th of March because St. Patrick's Day, but the 2-year anniversary of the pandemic is March 23rd of when we all locked down. So it could have been tomorrow, which would have been a more fitting day. It would have fit in line with everything. So I think they fought an uphill battle. I saw a lot of social media about it, which was great. The word was getting out there. The noise was great. So it was working and people were talking about it and people were discussing it. My biggest gripe about it was solely focused on the people working in social care. Now, I'm going to preface this with the fact that I had a bank worker who used to work for us. His family were very close friends with the deputy manager of our care home. Sadly lost his life to COVID whilst working in social care. So very much needed to celebrate the heroism of people working in social care throughout the entire pandemic. But we lost tens and tens of thousands of people who lived in care and drew on care services, and we've not had a day to remember them. And I think if we're going to try and remove that us and them culture, if we're going to try and remove that division between the ownership of care being the person delivering it and not the person receiving it, that it should have been a day for everybody. And I think we should have remembered everybody on that day. So I think it missed the mark there. There wasn't even a mention of it in any of the promotional material. So, I mean, I have made my views known. I've had a chat with a couple of people. There's another one coming up, I think, throughout April where we're celebrating social care. And again, the same thing, the omission of actual people living in care. When we discussed on last week's show, if it wasn't for people who received and drew on social care services, there'd be no need for us. So how dare we celebrate social care without actually including the people that actually matter, which is the people that rely on us to live healthy, well, and meaningful lives. I just think it's something we need to be having this open conversation about. It shouldn't be taboo to bring it up. I'm not overly challenging on it, but when it's big profile things like this, these are the times when we need to be going, hang about, let's all celebrate together because we're all celebrating social care workers now who can go to the pub and go on holiday and do whatever they want pretty much unrestricted, and yet there's still people living in care homes that are on rolling lockdowns, still unable to see their mothers, fathers, daughters, brothers, uncles, aunties, granddads, grandmas, what have you. I think we need to widen our view a bit.
And I think touching on on lockdowns and outbreaks, I was writing my column for Log My Care, and it's amazing. And I know we spoke about it earlier, how many care homes, are facing more outbreaks, back to being closed to visits. And I don't know, I kind of thought after the last 2 years of Easter's being on lockdown, a bit like Christmases, would actually be, open again. But, I think Norfolk are seeing, I think they've got a third of all their care homes that are on lockdown again. It's absolutely insane.
Well, it's not only that, they're saying that they're going to close. Well, there's a prediction that a third of all care homes in Norfolk County could close, which is terrifying. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've seen a reduction in the demand for care homes. We've seen the want for care homes decline over the last couple of years. And, part of that is most probably the pandemic. Who would want to move into a care home and be ostracized from society? So people are now exploring new avenues of accessing social care, but not to the extent where we don't need a third of care homes in one particular area. So that worries me of how we're going to continue to meet the needs of people. And this is why I honestly think we need to start pushing the agenda of actually including them in everything we do, because it is their care. And if something's not working, we need to have a look at the bigger picture. But I mean, that is scary stuff coming out of Norfolk, and I'm just hoping the tide changes. I spoke to one manager the other day, and we were discussing about visiting. They're in a rolling lockdown at the moment. Under current government guidance, for anyone that doesn't know this, if you are in an outbreak in your care home, under current government guidance, they still allow ECGs to come and visit, but ECGs should still be allowed to visit no matter what the situation in a care home. And they're encouraging outdoor visits and safe visits in other manners, even if you're in an outbreak. The problem we've got is Public Health England, or whatever they want to be called nowadays, take it upon themselves to supersede that guidance and go, guidance is cute, but we're not going to tell you to do that. We're going to tell you to have nobody in your care home. And that's where the issues come, because there's no point having guidance if independent public bodies can just overrule it. What's the point? What are we all fighting for? Until we get it written into law that everyone should have access to visits, I honestly don't think much is going to change in this current climate.
Yeah, no, sadly, I agree. But yeah, and I think it's those care homes that have been on lockdown for weeks. Some of them have been in lockdown for 2-3 months, and just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. And the impact to those residents' well-being, and also to the people, to their families, that you're worried about, you actually can't see your mum, your dad, or whoever it is within that care home, and actually, it just keeps going and going and going. It's where you draw that line and say, actually, you're going to bring them out, but do you have the care at home and in the community? Because actually, we know there's not enough carers in the community as well. But
yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think worried about how we might segue into tonight's conversation. I think that's one of my biggest concerns around a 4-day week is, how do we make sure that we can continue to staff social care if it's something that we decide to adopt? So I don't know whether we should bring in our esteemed guest.
Yes, let's do. So tonight we are talking about the 4-day working week, and we've got Daryl Huntley, who's the founder of the 4-day working week in the United Kingdom. Good evening, Daryl. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Adam.
Okay.
That was a lovely link.
Making himself very big there. So I was looking at some stats beforehand, and around some of the countries that have trialed the 4-day working week, and I know Japan has seen a 40% increase in productivity. New Zealand stated that they saw a 78% better work-life balance compared to a 54% beforehand. What would you say are the biggest benefits to a 4-day working week?
The majority of the data that has come out of companies and countries that have run studies and run trials is positive. Yeah, so Microsoft produced that, the data from Japan, celebrating the 40% increase in, in productivity. That they also experienced, I think it was something like a 35% decrease in the use of electricity as well, which, is now obviously something that is incredibly expensive also. So, that statistic has become more important than perhaps it was 2 years ago. Productivity is obviously an incredibly important aspect of it. But I think that for me personally, I think that one of the biggest benefits is what it does to the culture of a company.
So for anybody, and we'll touch on I'll make a note and come back to the culture. So for anybody watching who doesn't know what a 4-day working week is, can you just explain kind of this concept and a bit more about it for them?
Yeah, I mean, I am certainly not, at I didn't invent this. This, from a kind of mainstream point of view, goes back to a chap called Andrew Barnes, who he is the CEO of a company in New Zealand called Perpetual Guardian. He read, I believe it was an independent article on the plane about how productivity in the United States, in Canada, and the US was ranging between 1.5 to 2.5 hours per day. And so being, the leader of a company of around about 250 staff, I think at that point, realized that, well, actually, they would only need to be productive for 20 or so minutes more per day, and then they could take Friday off. So, he went to his board and kind of put it to them to say, like, look, let's trial this. He was met with resistance. This was not as much of a published ethos back then as it was now. But first people through the wall, right? Always get a bloody nose, right? So anyway, but he had resistance, but he pushed it through. And I think the incredibly clever part of what he did was he involved academics from the University of Auckland, who then they collected data on it from beginning to end to show the trend. So the numbers that are produced by him and also that are in his book, which is 4-day week, they're cited, and so here's the formula, I guess, that he has kind of ascribed to it is that you do 80% of the time for 80% of the time, 100% productivity. Crazy, I've got this wrong. I don't actually say this one very often. So it's 100% remuneration for 80% of the time and 100% productivity. Yeah. Now, that structure does identify kind of like, that, nothing changes in terms of productivity and money, but it also gives a certain element of flexibility. So I think that Andrew would himself say that, there are some people in his organization that take Friday off or a Monday, and there are some that take a couple of afternoons. It generally fits within the ethos of, allowing people the time to do things that are important.
I've got a plethora of I've got so many questions that I want to ask, but the first thing I want to know is what led you to found 4-day work week in the UK?
I mean, I read Andrew's book. I saw an article about it, and it's going to be something around October and November 2019, and I was consulting at that point, but it was very general consulting, and so I started for new clients, I started talking to them like at the end of things about like, well, if you were ever interested, I'd be happy to kind of like, put it, I'd be happy to put structure behind it, like this is what you'd need to do, like kind of thing. And it was all really quite, when I look back at it, it was quite rudimentary. And then it just kind of developed, and I thought, actually, like, I don't want to do the general process analysis and UX development and all that sort of, and as useful as my skills have, in kind of that area, they apply, I decided that I wanted to kind of narrow what it was, because I believe in it. I think that it's, I think it works for very large swathes of the business community, or working population, I should probably say. I believe in it. Yeah, I think my daughter would be proud of me doing it.
So how do people work less? You're talking to the uneducated here. So how do people
Yeah.
work less, get paid more, still have the same holiday, and the company not?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking. I'm referring non-social care at the moment, so office-based, industrial, what have you. How do people work less, get paid the same, still get the same benefits, and the company not have to hire other people? Is it a risk of actually forcing people to cram more work into the jobs and do more in that short period of time, and probably reduce efficacy in place of efficiency?
Yeah, I mean there are lots of things that that can happen, and so I guess there's kind of two strings really. Like I mean, like there's the kind of the introduction aspect of it, which is a kind of like the soft area of it, and then there's the hard, which is the processes. And so I guess if you were to take general office job in somewhere knowledge industry, I mean if we were to make it easier, then if one was to look at how many meetings somebody takes, right, or how much time they're taking on duplicated tasks, or they're following a process that may be antiquated, may be able to be shortened. How many different pieces of software does one have to use in order to get a job done? Reading emails, like there's lots of little things that can be done practically, to kind of make someone more efficient, right? But the main win for the 4-day week, right, and the kind of special sauce, right, is what it does to a culture, right? So it's and Andrew actually pointed this out even in his book, back in the day, right? I think it is incredibly important to involve the teams in the process, right? If there are companies that have inflicted it, have just said, okay, Ron, we're doing a 4-day week now. I mean, as lovely as that sounds, right? Sometimes people can have a kind of get there, but hang on, you don't tell me what, So that the way that you make it stick, right, is to kind of like say, okay, like who would like to work a 4-day week? People put their hands up, and then it's like, okay, right, well, how do we deliver it, right? And then kind of giving them the space. And the authority, I says, to some degree, to kind of look at how they do their jobs, at how they work with their managers, how they work cross department, whether that's just an exchange of information or just identifying availability, right? And then they become part of that process, right? And then what you do, you've built a kind of a tended garden thing, right? So then teams work better together. Morale goes up. People have got each other's backs. Sickness goes down. Team participation goes up. And so there's a holistic saving in that that's tough to quantify, right? Like there isn't a company in the world that says, well, this year we saved 1.5 million by just because everyone loved each other, right? It's tough to put a fiscal value to that. However, like that cohesion, right, where people, they're not just seeing how the sausage is made, right? Like they're helping make it, right? And that's an incredibly valuable part of it, because this isn't just introducing a benefit. As far as I refused, this isn't like, free fruit Tuesdays. Like, I mean, it's not a benefit. It's, it's a culture change, and cultures don't change quickly. They take time, and they take strong leadership and, good stewardship. And all that.
One question that came in on Twitter actually was, is there a particular day of the week that is better or has been proven to have more productivity to have off in the week? So is it best to have a Monday or a Friday or a weekday or?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I take Mondays off. Like, I think that works for me. I think there have been polls on LinkedIn about this very subject, and it's pretty mixed. Fridays obviously particularly popular because there's lots of events that are that start on those days, and travel for the weekend, etc. I think it, in terms of like what's best for productivity, I think that the important part is that is the rested mind that's returning, right, to work, rather than actually like looking to kind of maximize the time when you're there. I think it kind of converts the question. I know what they're trying to say, like, or asking, but it converts the equation from like a marathon to a sprint, right? And actually your mind operates differently when you change those parameters. So it's,
I mean, if it was me, I personally would probably take a Wednesday, because I love the idea of doing Monday, Tuesday, rest. Thursday, Friday, 2 days rest. Monday, Tuesday, rest, and break it up bite size. So, right, I'm getting it. I can see it. I can sort of visualize it. I can see how it's going to work for back offices. I can see how it's going to work for admin teams. I think Community Integrated Care were the first social care company in the UK to introduce a 4-day week back in 21. My concern, and I don't know whether you've got the answer for this, is how it would apply to shift work. So it's great to trim the fat in the offices.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer, actually, of reducing our meetings to 45-minute meetings, because then you get yourself 15 minutes afterwards and you can go up and get a brew, because no one wants to put a meeting in at 11:45, say. So I get that. I understand that. But when it comes to shift work, especially in, say, social care or in supermarkets and what have you, there's no way to condense that work, because, especially in social care, it isn't work, it's people's lives that we're dealing with. So do we run the risk of, if it's not applicable to shift work in social care, do we run the risks of continuing the practice of benefiting people who work in offices better than actually people working out there on the front line, because they're effectively working for the same rate of pay, but the people in the offices have had an overnight increase because they're working one less day? So how would we tackle it in a shift pattern world?
I mean, there's a few aspects to this, and so I mean, there are some industries that are harder, right, to kind of convert to the 4-day week than others, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. I think that, if you have strong forward-thinking leadership, right, who have, they reach a conclusion that actually retaining, the knowledge and the staff that they have, right, has more value, right, than burning them out for X amount of time and then just having to deal with that churn of staff, right? Which again, it's, we're talking about the holistic cost of, the involvement, right? Whether there is also a holistic cost of replacing people, right? Okay, you can probably, calculate that, all right, well, we're replacing X amount of people per year, which means, we're actually spending, 100, 200,000 pounds with Reed or other recruitment agencies are available. But there is also like, under what terms did they leave, right? What did they do to the morale, right? I mean, like, if it was bad, right? What do the people feel who are having to cover the person who has now left if they weren't able to replace them? Or now they have to have someone shadowing them, and now it's harder for them to do their job. How long has it taken until they found that person to replace that other person? And is that new person any good, right? So again, there is a cost that is allocated to those, but it's very difficult to nail down in a spreadsheet. But it is very real, and the number is very large. It's far larger than most people would be prepared to to actually talk about. Companies don't generally like to kind of say, well, yeah, we lost a couple of people last year. Well, they were doozies. You should have seen the mess they left behind. Like, it doesn't happen, right? Like, you project strength. Right? So anyway, it doesn't mean it isn't happening. So there is a cost there that potentially the 4-day week can heal, right? In terms of retaining good people, rewarding them for their hard work, and keeping them in happy and in the job that they're there to do. Okay, so there is that. I appreciate that. Yes, I mean, if you have X amount of stuff to do, then if you're on, if there's a 24-hour care situation going on, okay, and everyone's got their 8 hours, then I appreciate that it is, it's difficult to kind of know that in. But again, like I do believe that if people were asked, right, okay, how do we do this, right, then there is a possibility that some of those people might get creative, right, with a solution to that. I don't personally know what it's. I've seen other things that have worked, right, but I think a lot of companies are different, and I think that that imagination, that and that ingenuity in order to kind of reach something is something that to achieve this is something that should be encouraged, right? But yeah, I'm not saying it's easy for every industry, but forward-thinking leaders, that's what we need.
I think the only time I've ever seen a 4-day, and it's not really a 4-day working week in social care, is the care providers that do 4 on, 4 off, and it's mainly home care. But they normally come to the 14, 15-hour shift, and you do that for 4 days, and you get 4 off. But I always worry about the burnout, and I know when the company I worked for, I was always concerned that actually, those staff by the end of that 4-day period were absolutely shattered going into their days off. It probably took them 2-3 days to recuperate. We've had a question in the comments, and I might have misinterpreted this. So if I have, they'll have to just drop another message. So it's a question about how does it work with elderly people, people with learning disability, or dementia. So I kind of interpreted it as maybe people that aren't as quick as being as productive as, say, you and I are. How can the 4-day week work for people that have got other needs within the workplace?
I don't think it would be much different. I think those people in the workplace would still have an appropriate relationship with their line management, right? And I guess there would always be guidance and help. And I think one of the key things, and I'm not sure if we're talking about social care here or just kind of the general workspace, but what is incredibly important is transparency, so that each department or the company, certainly from headline point of view as well, can see what work needs doing, see what the pipeline is, right? Because if there needs to be parity, right, so that everybody knows what needs to get done. I mean, if the person who has specific needs, like has a workflow, right, well, then that isn't necessarily going to change, but they may need a helping hand, perhaps more than others, or not, to achieve that. I would, as always, expect empathy from good leadership.
So when it comes to it, the 4-day working week, it really is about promoting flexibility in life. It's about achieving that happy work-life balance. Is it general practice, say, that, let's say most weeks I take a Wednesday off, and that's my pattern, I want to have my Wednesdays off, but Coachella's coming up at the end of the month, and I want to go Friday. Not that I'd ever go to Coachella. I don't even know what it is. It's just a word. I think it's a festival.
You should, Adam. I think you should.
But it's not like the Fire Festival. I know what that one is. But let's say that I think actually it's going to benefit me to have a Friday off instead of a Wednesday this week. Is it common practice to actually switch which day you take off, or does it become like an unspoken contract that actually Wednesday becomes your 3rd day off, or whichever chosen day you've had?
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, that we can swap them about, how does it work for annual leave, and how does that get factored into the whole idea of 4 days?
I mean, I think, again, different companies apply different rules on this. Like the 4-day week doesn't have a set template, like it's a guideline. And the majority of the companies that, of which there's, a few hundred now, right, are, have found their own route, right? So it's, however, and to answer your question, it is easier if there's rigidity, right? But so that then you can schedule and forecast, right? I mean, which is important as well, because the company needs to function and it needs rules, and it needs, companies operate best in a predictable environment. Not that we're in one now, but I mean, I think you try to control the things that you can, and at least understanding the staffing levels are going forward helps, right? Does that mean that someone would want to deprive you of going to Coachella, Adam? I would sincerely hope not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the answer is, rigidity, like is useful.
I can imagine that, Adam, at Coachella. I can imagine it's right up his street.
Yeah.
One question I have is, I know if I take a few days off work, I come back to a mountain full of emails. So I take a long weekend and I spend kind of a whole day playing catch up to the point where I now just take my laptop, take my phone everywhere I go, and every evening just get through the emails. If obviously you're working a 4-day week, is there any advice on how you manage kind of those emails if you're out of the office for a particular day of the week?
Yeah, I mean, communication is incredibly important as well. We're very neatly hitting all of the key aspects of this, and managing expectations. Be it the person that sits next to you or the customer the other side of the world. Like, you need to let them know what the deal is, right? Or otherwise, they would keep emailing you, and add 10 or 12 to your inbox. But communicating is important, and providing backup, right? Like, if you're in an industry or where you can't, some companies can just close on Friday, right? Other companies that have operational staff obviously can't. So you would put in place ways to combat that. And it can, if we're talking specifically about emails, I guess it can range. You could have in your email saying, "I'm not here. This email is not going to get read until another," or it's just, "I'm not even going to get this email. Contact me on Monday," or contact Bob, Sarah, whatever. But yeah, I mean, emails are a problem across the globe. I think everyone has lots and lots of those to deal with. So I think it's an opportunity, if one was looking at how to kind of improve their efficiencies, at looking at the root cause of some of the volume, right? It helps.
And I guess that comes back down to culture, doesn't it? So I think, and I agree with Mark, there is that worry that, because I'm one of those people who might work 14 hours one day and 3 or 4 hours the next day, because it depends on how much work I'm planning on. And when I'm in the flow, when I'm in that zone, I'm like Luke Skywalker, I'm, stay on target. That is me, and I get stuff done, and it's great. And I do find myself sometimes replying to emails at 10 o'clock in the evening, and I have to put in the subject, "Do not reply to this until you're back at work. Do not read until you're back at work. I apologize for emailing out of hours. This is just what I do. It's flexible working hours for myself." But I think it's part of the culture that we need to shift from, that actually we can just bombard people with superfluous emails that fill up inboxes, that feel like, you need to reply to them. And it's maybe a culture shift we need to change as ourselves in management, in leadership, and we need to have a look at the full culture as a whole. Would you agree? Is that, an approach that we should be taking if we're looking at a 4-day week?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it should be something looked at collectively, not just by, senior management, for instance. It's not only just direct emails that are the problems, but the CC and the BCC as well. I mean, it doesn't take too many of those, right? And they take time, right? It might only be a second or 20, right? But if you are having to go through those to kind of check that this isn't relevant to you or is relevant to you, right, then it's all a process. And it's also like it takes you away from like what you're doing as well. Like it can be quite stilted, or when you are in something, then an email comes up and distracts you, right? So something that many companies that are operating a 4-day week do, especially, from an office point of view, is allocate time that is where they are undisturbed. so they can get their head down and do a job without, they've turned the phone off. They've turned, they've D&D'd their email and Slack and, any other IMs. There are some companies that, who are working for the office, you put a sign up, right? There's a red flag. Right, don't come and tap on my shoulder now asking me if I've got any staples because I'm busy. So, and again, that these are things that that teams thought about, right? I think that perhaps we should possibly put our mobile phones at the end of the office, for instance, right? I mean it's if you're a procrastinator, right, the telephone is a dangerous tool. But then again, sometimes people do need to have a little break, right? To kind of okay, all right, I need to think about that. All right, okay, BBC News. All right, close that. All right, or whatever it is. There's pros and cons, and again, these things get talked about, right? And ideas get thrown around, and maybe you try one, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and then maybe you try a new one, right?
It's a bit highbrow for us. That usually is TikTok from Mark and I'm like, oh my god. And we'll send over a funny video, and then before you know it, you've ended up scrolling for an hour. Not that I do that. And can I just ask, as a PSA to anybody who thinks email chains are fun, they are not. If I, at least in WhatsApp, in a WhatsApp chat, I can skim through and just go all like that. But when you're receiving 100, 200 emails a day, and you're having to sift through to try and find which one's in order. And I want to print them out and put them on my desk, actually, and try and figure out what's going on, because I haven't a clue half the time. They're not fun. BCC. Just BCC everyone, unless actually you need a response that actually people can reply to all, because it takes way too much time. Way too much time.
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, I think that's a pretty good process right there. Everyone's blind copied, unless, yeah.
The one thing I do with emails, rightly or wrongly, is if I'm away, if I know I'm going to be away, so like in April, I'll be away for 10 days, is my out of office will say that on my return, I will archive all the emails that I've received in that period. So I won't even look at them. I will just move them into my folder that says done. And that actually, if you actually need a response, to resend it when I'm back in the office. And I must admit, it does eliminate some of the emails. It wouldn't eliminate those bloody CC ones where somebody's like, congratulations on a job offer or whatever, and then you end up with about 50 different replies from people saying congratulations, but or happy birthday so and so, and you get 200 replies. But one question with
I do know someone who you can automate that. Like, I mean, I do know a couple of people that do that as well. Like, to sort of they walk the walk. It's like, your email has come in while I'm not here, and it's been archived. Not like I do it, it's done. Like, you will need to send this again later. Thanks. Anyway, but it's a good idea. I like it. I'm a big fan.
So one question that's come in and on LinkedIn, and I don't know if you're going to know the answer, it's a bit out there, is somebody has put that they love the idea of working the 4-day week, but they also love the idea of working outside more. Can you help?
I mean, I wonder if this is saying, like, if you're a landscape gardener, can you do 4 days a week? I'm not sure the answer to that one. I'd like the idea of a 4-day week, and I'd like to work outside more. I mean, I'm inclined to just give them 2 thumbs up. I agree with both of those statements.
How do we? I mean, there's definitely something. I work from home now, and this is completely new to me. So, the idea of 4-day week for me feels like a 7-day week because I actually live here. So I've got to try and move my mentality of once I'm in my office and I've closed my awful screen divider, then I'm in work. And then once I walk out and I've shut it, I'm not in work. Sometimes the laptop does follow me to my sofa and I do sit there and do some work in the evenings. But it's something that, I mean, I don't want to be a landscape gardener. I've not got a green thumb, green fingers, or anything like that. But I would love to work my work and do that outside more. I just wonder how achievable that is for office workers, because 4-day weeks are great. But I think the pandemic taught a lot of people that vitamin D is incredibly important. So maybe there needs to be a focus on actually how can we get our workers more vitamin D during the days? Can we make outside office spaces? Can we encourage that as much as possible? It's just a thought, might not work. You know, you can't work at Iceland and stack shelves outside, but it's definitely something to consider about promoting mental health and well-being by getting more raised safely and protected. Anyway,
I believe the biggest hurdle to that is just the lumen quantity of a screen. I think I think the only reason that doesn't work is because screens don't go bright enough, and perhaps temperature is an issue as well. But no, I mean, I you know, from a mental health perspective, you know, being outside, breathing fresh air, having the sun on your face, and you know, I mean, is incredibly important. And you know, I think those are the things that are benefits, right? That I don't think that companies need to turn away from that. Like, I think personally, I think that the 4-day week is bigger than a benefit, right? I think that it, you know, it's an indication that a company recognizes the importance of culture, right? It recognizes that people need to have appointments at doctors and dentists or nail salons, or they have people to look after, or they have children to collect, right? You know, there's a myriad reasons why people could use that day and not take it from the company, right? It's almost like we just need to kind of like have an honest conversation. You know, like people steal this time. If they can, they'll steal it. I am working. Look, there's a fan blowing my mouse, right? And while it's doing that, I'm going to go and hang the washing out. I mean, it's crazy, you know? And so I think there has to be a bit of an acceptance within the business community that people are just taking this time from you anyway, right? And so, you know, they're taking it because you don't have a good enough relationship with them, right? There's a parent-child thing going on, right? And it starts at the beginning. You know, the interview is very, well, you know, okay, well, I've done this and you, okay, all right, well, you've got the job. It's Monday to Friday. There's the seat, toilet's over there, crack on, right? Like, and from the beginning, it's a very parent-child. One of the great things that the 4-day week does is it brings parity to it, and it brings a much more adult kind of relationship, you know, where, you know, people are part of it, you know, they're making something together, right? And they protect it. Everyone's working towards the same thing. Everyone's got the same direction. I like the 4-day week. I want to keep it. Right, come on, guys, let's do. Brenda, do you need help? Let's do it. Let's smack, right. And so it just makes, it focuses everybody and kind of get them going in the right direction. And even, you know, if you know, if things perhaps aren't going particularly well with an employee, and you know, you're having to have that conversation about performance or whatever, like, I mean, even in those situations, it enables a far more adult conversation. It's like, Steve, look, come on, you know, we want the 4-day week, everyone's loving it, right? You know, but what can I do to help you deliver on this, right? Or like this particular metric is down. And you know, businesses are always going to have metrics. In fact, like I said a little earlier, like having a transparency about the amount of work that's in the pipeline, the amount of work that's currently ongoing and delivered, right, is an important part of it, especially in the early days, right? Like, management want to see that this is working, right? And the only way you do that is with data. And so it you know, from an early days point of view. So yeah, it definitely, it changes the dynamic of a relationship positively.
I mean, all this talk of being an adult, and I think the worst realization of when you actually get to be an adult is Saturday is spent doing all your jobs and your errands and your chores because you work Monday to Friday, and then Sunday you spend absolutely knackered because you spend Saturday doing everything you couldn't do during the week, dreading going back to work on Monday because, you know, by the end of next week you're going to have a ton more chores to do on the Saturday. So it's like, there has to be that give, there has to be that relaxation, there has to be that that flexibility during the week so people can get bits done without our own downtime being forced into actually living, because people are ending up working to live and then struggling to live in their own time off. So I'm an office worker. I run an office. I've got X amount of staff. Top 3 tips on how I can approach implementing a 4-day week. What are the first 3 things that I should be doing to go, actually, if I do these 3 things, I'm going to be on track to adapt my culture and to get this embraced fully within the company?
All right. So are you looking for a way, like a pitch almost, to put to your bosses to okay.
I mean, it's not my business. I'm talking hypothetical.
Yeah, sure. I got it. I got it. Yeah, no, I got it.
But like for anyone watching, if they could go, oh, these top 3 tips are going to really help me to implement a 4-day week.
Yeah. Okay. So it's definitely worth doing research first, and I don't mean online. I mean like into your, into what you do, right? Where are you spending your time? What processes can be, improved upon, right? And whether there's, I guess, other people that are in a similar situation to you. Strength in numbers helps when that is going, but it needs to be quite data-based, right? And so, yeah, research would be the one, to kind of find out, where there is possible, and then when you're taking it, to the management team, you are going to kind of pitch to them that it would be a trial, nothing set in stone, right? You're not trying to get them to kind of, change everything overnight. But look, this data, like we've looked at this, we can see that these places that we spend time, and even being honest, like, look, I'm going to use I'm going to use my phone less, right? Or, and giving that up, right? And sort of saying like, look, anyway, the upshot is like, we know we can definitely maintain productivity, and we'll be able to measure it in these things. And then other things that, that the management team are going to be interested in is obviously the bottom line, right? So productivity is great. But again, like we just talked about, like an opportunity for people to get things done, which people always have to do anyway, whether it is, dentist or doctor or any number of those appointments. They're like, okay, so, there's going to be no ad hoc time now, right? Where people have to kind of take time off, and then you have to find cover, like we'll get the things done that we need to do in our day. And also then, it's difficult to talk about retention because you're talking about yourself. You'll retain me. I mean, like, you play that card if it feels right. But staff attraction, if they get the opportunity to flatter their bosses and say, we're growing so well because everything's going so swimmingly, right, that we are going to be looking for new people, right? And XX and X, we're in a competitive market for talent, right? I tell you what, you offer the same salary as the guys next door, and you're doing it in a 4-day week, then you get CVs, you get talent, and so yes, that would be those would be my suggestions. So it would be research, assemble support if possible, and then make sure you remember the other profitable benefits that could come from it.
Oh, no, Mark, you're muted first. I was
just going to say that there's some good tips. And we've had a question come in on Twitter just while you were talking about countries that have trialed it and have now rolled it out permanently. So I know obviously there's a lot of research that's out there about companies that have done it short term and that they saw X amount of productivity go up or the work-life balance. Is there any countries that have rolled this out permanently now?
Yeah, I think Iceland are the ones that are there completely. We're early doors on this, really. The majority are private organisations. But the data is there. Like, so, Spain is running a trial at the moment. Ireland's running a trial. Scotland, the 4-day week global and the 4-day week campaign, we're independent. By the way, there's no direct affiliation. They're working with people as well, and so there's lots going on. I mean, even in India have kind of talked about it as well as Belgium, but I think there are different interpretations of it, and some of them, the people that are within the cause disagree with some of the ways of doing it. So I think Belgium and India have promoted the 4-day week, but they're 4 10-hour days. Now, if you've got an hour commute either way, which is very common in India, right? I mean, then you aren't getting many chores done on that 5th day, right? You're gonna be sleeping, which defeats the object. This isn't about that, right? This is about empowerment. This is about trusting people, right? This is about saying, like, look, I tell you what, look, we'll give you this and you give us that. In theory, the kind of existing, contracts of employment should do that. But I think now, people don't want to work to live, right? Or no, sorry, it's the other way around. Actually, they don't want to work to live; they want to live to work, right? So, or is it? Anyway, I'm confusing myself now. But I think you get what I mean, right? And so there is more empowerment in the workforce now than there ever has been before. I think this is the time of the employee, and I think that there has been a power shift, and so it has. Andrew's book came at an crazy, incredible time, right? Like, it was months before a pandemic, right, which enabled the conversation to open. We're living in a time where obviously remote working is now a little bit easier, and we've cut more cords. Also we have to remember right now, like, the world is changing in ways that we've never seen in our lifetime, right? Like the atrocities, quite frankly, that are happening in Ukraine, right? If they don't make you consider your own mortality, right? Well, they should, right? I mean, like, where does this go, right? But also, like, it reminds me I need to spend more time with my daughter, and so there is a human element to this, that we kind of like have to recognize, and so I think that I've forgotten the question, but I hope that I've given something nearing a good answer.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, my thoughts were wandering while you were talking. I was listening to what you were saying, but it was also sparking new thoughts. And with the idea of the 4-day week meaning different things to different people in different countries and the approaches being different, one really has to ask whether the 4-day week is just going to be an extension of a model of flexible living and flexible working moving forward, so that you might sit down with your team and go, it's going to be great, we're going to do this 4-day week, you're only going to work 9 to 5, 4 days a week. And people might go, actually, if we're going to reduce down to 32 hours or thereabouts, I really wouldn't mind doing 9 till 3 every day, because it means I'd be able to drop my kid off at school and spend that morning with them. And then I've got more time in the afternoon with them every day. So I appreciate you wanting to be, me to have an extra day off, but this would mean more to me doing it that way. And maybe it's an idea, maybe it's just an approach that people are going to have to take, where 4-day week is an option for some of them in the company, but actually we want to make sure that your work-life balance meets your needs and is personally tailored to the different team members.
I mean, completely. That fits well within the ethos, right? I mean, if I'm honest, and again, I've quoted him a lot tonight, as Andrew, is that the 4-day week is clickbait to a point, right? I mean, it is a very easily translatable concept, right, which resonates with everybody. It doesn't need explanation, right? Does that conversation lead to something broader about flexibility? Of course, right? Again, no one's looking to inflict anything on anybody here, right? We want to work with people to kind of, what works with them. And again, Andrew at Perpetual Guardian, some of the people work 4 days and some of them take 2 afternoons off. But again, I mean, working 6 hours a day, that Sweden does that. Like, that's or we're not all of Sweden, but swathes, right, do that kind of do those hours. So it's not, it's still the same amount of hours, and it's well within the ethos. It's it all helps improve the quality of people's lives and output. Win.
So for somebody that's worked a 4-day week or has that kind of better work-life balance, so I know for me, my day job, I can do the school run, I can start work, I can pick the kids up from school if I want to, and then work into the evening. So I can kind of choose the hours I do within reason. So if you then go to a company that doesn't offer that, is there anything kind of that you would advise for that employee to kind of discuss at that interview stage? So I know for me personally, I'd say, actually, I've worked 60-hour weeks and I've got used to now taking my kids to school. That's something that's really important to me and something that I would actually want going forward. But when it comes to the 4-day week, what would your advice be to an employer?
Do you know what? That's so. I've had a lot of conversations about the 4-day week, and no one has ever asked me that question. I wonder what your motivation would be for transitioning from a 4-day week to a 5. I guess it's honest. I guess you'd talk about it as you would anything else. I work a 4-day week, and one would hope that they would say, interesting, how do you manage that? Like, if they're genuinely interested, in what you've managed to achieve in your work life, and they'd like you to come on board to kind of deliver something similar, right? And you've done that because I'm assuming you're not going complete career change, right? Let's say it is like it is an upward move, right? Then I'd hope they'd want to ask you questions about that and see how you achieved it, and then adopt it, perhaps. I think, to me, that sounds like a learning opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Adam, saw you unmuted.
No, I was just going to say that we're running towards the end of the show, and my mind's still afire with ideas and thoughts about a 4-day week, and I just think it's progress now within industries to be discussing flexibility, and I think we've gotten to a part in society and in productivity where actually we're realizing the strength of every industry, of every business, is the people. It's not the money makers, it's not the business makers, it's not the people sat there putting out the business cases. It's the people supporting those businesses by going to work every day. And actually, the biggest investment we can make as organizations, as companies, is to those people. So I'm really proud that we're having these open conversations now, when people are starting to talk about them. And any idea about flexibility, I mean, Mark and I have discussed it before. Care homes will say, but we're struggling to hire people. And it's like, well, what are your shift patterns? And they'll go, well, it's 8 till 8, and we just can't get the people to work. And it's like, well, have you thought about abolishing the 8 till 8? Because just because it's always been like that doesn't mean it should be. And why don't you introduce 9 till 2 shifts? Well, then how are we going to staff the morning? Well, if you introduced a 5 till 9 shift or a 6 till 9 shift, you'll probably find the people who are working as janitors and cleaners in places because those hours fit and suit them, but they've always wanted to do care work but can't because they don't fit in with shift patterns, will eventually be able to go, oh, do you know what? I can go and do a 6 till 9 in the morning in a care home instead of being a cleaner, which, no detriment to anybody who works in cleaning and infection control. I think you're amazing. But if they've always wanted to do social care work, then that's an opportunity for them because it fits in with their lifestyles. And it's about rewiring our brains to ignore what's always been and come up with something brand new and fresh. I did a piece for our members recently, and I was talking about innovation and changing or reaffirming your values, your missions, and your branding. And it's always easier to start with a blank canvas. Even if you've got a mission, vision, and values in place, that's great. But if you bring that to the table, it's going to hinder creating something new because you're always going to look back at what you've currently got. So go with something fresh and something new. So if it's not working, great, but don't look at adapting your current model. Look at changing it. Be brave, be bold.
Yeah.
If you go out of business, it's not my fault for taking that advice because it's unsolicited advice. I am not saying it's infallible.
No, I think that's great. I mean, that was you're spot on. Like, we have to change the way that we think. Or certainly just take our glasses off to like, hang on a minute, the situation that we're in could probably be reviewed. And yeah, you're absolutely right. People do 8 to 8 because they had to. They had to take the job, or it was 8 till 6, and then someone said, "Well, look, you've got to do till 8, or otherwise we're going to have to lose you." And it's like, "All right, well," or whatever it was that kind of led to that turn of events. But like I say, I think people are reviewing it now. People value their own time more, and the companies that value people's time and people's lives are the guys that are making that change. And there will be people in social care, maybe people that are listening to this right now, that will think, "All right, look, let's have a sit down and see what we can do."
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. There's definitely a culture shift between people actually wanting to spend more time at home with family or friends than they do in the workplace. And I think employers need to adjust. And I think social care going forward will need to adjust to keep in competition with what other organisations are doing. Otherwise, the problematic that we have with recruitment anyway is only going to get worse.
Yeah. Well, we all used to work 6 days a week. And then, there was a tipping point that moved it to 5. The first people through, were, the kind of the entrepreneurs who saw this as not risky at all. They saw it as an easy win, which, those are the guys that are making the calls right now. And then you get to a point where, okay, well, a few of your competitors are now doing it, right? And you're either losing, your talent to those people, or just struggling to attract. And so you get a tipping point, and it's completely bipartisan, right? It's whether you're left or right or whatever you're doing, then, it wins. And you know what? The guys that win out of this the most, you got the Googles or Facebooks or whoever it is, who don't have a problem attracting talent because they're in sexy industries, right? Well, you've got the actuaries or the whatever, right? That do struggle to kind of attract the talent. Well, those guys will benefit immediately, from kind of showing that kind of forward thinking, culture.
Yes, no, definitely. Right. Well, I'm very conscious of time. Thank you very much, Daryl, for joining us. Adam, who have we got next week?
So next week we have got Mike Adams joining us from Purple, and forgive me, her name escapes me right now. Sierra joining us from MenCap, and we're going to be talking about disability awareness, and not just disability awareness within social care. Disability awareness needs to be an across the board thing. Now I think it's I have this conversation about dementia, and it's fine thinking, we must train everybody in social care to understand dementia. But actually, everybody in society could do with knowing about it, because the minute we realize that community can support social care, and that if the community was on board and understood what the elements of social care were, then things would be better. And with disability awareness, it needs to be an across the board thing. And there's some amazing work going on in making organizations, disability organizations, to promote equality. Really looking forward to next week's chat. And thank you, Daryl, for joining us tonight. I think it's been wonderful.
No, thank you for having me. It's been, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll see you next week, Adam. Thank you very much, Daryl. See you later.
Yes, thank you. Bye.